Hey everyone, my name is Jesse, and it's so great to be here with you. We're going to be jumping into a 2-week series called This or That. This week, we're talking about the kingdom of God, and we're going to be looking at one of Jesus' most famous speeches called the Sermon on the Mount. But before we dive into there, I want to talk about the power of speeches. I don't know about you, but I've heard some really amazing and powerful speeches in my life. And maybe you've heard about some of these. Here, let's pick on 3 of them. The first one would be like Martin Luther King Jr., that I have a dream speech. Another one might be Abraham Lincoln, 77 years ago, our forefathers. And maybe you've heard of Winston Churchill and his famous line when he said, "We shall fight them on the beaches." What all these speeches and so many famous speeches have in common is that they inspire people to action. Martin Luther King Jr. inspired a movement of segregation and to fight against racism. Abraham Lincoln inspired a young nation to do and be better. Winston Churchill inspired a city and a country to fight against tyranny. In a few minutes, we're going to be talking about one of the most famous speeches given by Jesus in Matthew 5. We call this speech the Sermon on the Mount. But before we dive in there, I want to talk about people who have inspired you to make an act or to do something with your life. I want to share one of my stories. So one of the people that has inspired me the most was my youth pastor growing up. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My parents got divorced really early when I was a kid, and I was angry, and I fought, and I was depressed, and I was really frustrated. At 13, I even wasn't sure if I wanted to live in this world anymore. I actually thought about taking my own life. I didn't think anyone loved me or cared for me, and I didn't think I was worthy of love. But my youth pastor, he just kept on loving me. He kept on chasing me. He kept on pursuing me. And eventually, he pointed me to Jesus. And I fell in love with the God of the universe and said yes to him. That inspiration challenged me to actually do for others what had been done for me. And so at about 14 years old, I decided to be a youth pastor. When I was 18, I started my very first church while I was going to Bible school, running a youth group for like a dozen kids. I was a youth pastor. And I did that job in different churches for the next 20 years. I wanted to do for others what had been done for me. So let's get back to our question. I want you to turn to your small groups or someone around you, or if you're watching this online at home, I want you to think about this question and share your answers with someone you trust. So here's our question. Who is someone that inspires you and why? One more time, who is someone that inspires you and why? Now go talk. Hey everyone, welcome back. Like I said, we're going to be looking at one of Jesus' most famous speeches. We're actually going to look at the front half of that speech, and it's we call it the Beatitudes. It's the first kind of few verses, so we'll be looking at Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12. So if you've got a Bible or you want to, grab your app on your phone, whatever you want to do, you might want to look up Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12, or we're going to just kind of read it together, and it'll be up here on the screen. So Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12. Seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely. On my account, rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." I want to point out a few things in these verses and we kind of break them down. The first thing I want to point out is that there aren't any do's and don'ts. These are not rules. Let's look at 3 of these verses, verse 3, 5, and 9. Verse 3, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. These are just things that are byproducts of your relationship with Jesus. It's not about doing something or getting something or being a certain way. You just kind of have them. You just kind of receive them. The second thing I want to point out is the there and theys in these statements. What I love about this is that it implies that it's not just unique to one particular person. It actually applies to everyone. So it's not just really good church people that can get these things, or it's not just for the Israelites, or it's not just for religious, and it's not even just for adults. It's for everyone. See, if you're poor in spirit, then yours is the kingdom of God. If you are just poor in spirit, then yours is the kingdom of God. The challenge here is that the Beatitudes are for everyone, but it's a byproduct of our relationship with Jesus. See, you can't earn it, beg for it, buy it, steal it. You can't get more of it. You can't do any of those things to, let's say, inherit the earth. See, God's work in your life, He is not seeking perfection or actions. And this is what's countercultural to what the world operates. See, the world would say things like this: blessed are the self-confident, for they can accomplish anything. Or blessed are those who do what they have to do to win, for they are unstoppable. Or maybe it's blessed are those who stir up action, for they will get lots of attention. Here's the contrast. The world says you have to earn it. You got to hustle. You got to make it. Junior youth student, you got to figure out your life plan. You got to put it all together. You got to work for it. You got to work hard, get the best grades, get in the best schools. You got to be the top of the class. You got to be all these things. You got to earn it, and fight for it, and fight for it. But God says you can't earn it. So I'll send you Jesus. You can't earn it. So I'll send you Jesus. And this is the idea here, that it pushes against culture. The sin is a choice of self over God. The world's version of the speech is not inspirational. It's actually really self-serving. Jesus is challenging us to choose to live our lives in a way that pushes against culture and pushes against our natural pull of self over everything else, this or that. What I love here is that in verse 11 and 12, Jesus changes the tone from they are to you and your. Let's read it. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So they persecuted the prophets who were before you. See, you have a choice. And that's really what the Sermon on the Mount and this beginning part is all about. You have a choice. Will you choose to push against culture, to push against the draw of self, and choose to build your life on Jesus? The byproduct of that choice is actually found in the Beatitudes. I want to read them one last time. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You have a choice to make. But Jesus is also really clear that that choice will equal persecution because you're pushing against culture. You're pushing against the norm. But again, Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Saying yes and following Jesus is one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make. You are called to an action to live for the kingdom of God and not live for the world, to choose this or that. Great speeches call us to action, and then this speech is a great speech, but you've got to choose. Will you choose to live for Jesus and run against culture, or choose self? This or that? It's a hard choice. But I don't want you to forget the end of this little section. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Hey, thanks so much for joining me this week. I can't wait to jump into part 2 of this. Enjoy your small group time. If you were watching this online or on your own, encourage you to work through the small group questions that are posted with them and share that with somebody you trust. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.